Hi there, this is Doug yet again, and yeah, I know. It seems like I just love talking to myself in my office. Of course, difference is I don't have the cat this time. Anyway, it came to my mind as I was doing a routine little thing here. I'm sure a lot of you people, after working with Eclipse for a few weeks, a few years, you find that it's really kind of designed to do a one at a time thing. I mean, with solar, yeah, you can have multiple windows open and move back and forth. But I mean, transaction per transaction, record per record, this system is really designed more to deal with one thing at a time. And it does that very, very well. But what happens when you need to change or update a bunch of things at a time? Now, I've done a video on using the file update utility to change product information, and you can also use the utility to do customer and vendor information. But there are some things, there are some settings that there just isn't like a mass change everything tool that you can do in Eclipse. I have had to do extremely bizarre things with Eclipse over the past 18 years, and if I hadn't found tricky ways of automating it, it would have taken hundreds or thousands of man hours more than what it actually did. I've had to single-handedly automate an entire inventory process in 4 hours with just me. I've had to do a lot of record setting changes that there was just no easy way to get at, that I could have had a team of people and it'd take 2 weeks to complete. And a lot of times you'll find something that you're trying to do cleanup, something that you didn't know had happened for years, and now you want to go back and do a cleanup. And the cleanup process is fairly simple, but you got to do it thousands of times over again. And I don't know, if you have to hit the same like 4 or 5 key sequences and hop back and forth into screens, you'll lose your mind and you'll get arthritis early. So, tricks. There are a variety of interesting tricks that I developed over the years, and I was inspired by, I've been in IT for, it seems like forever. Uh, I don't quite predate vacuum tubes, but I swear it's getting close. And so back in the day, there was a very interesting Windows tool written by a weird little company in Seattle called Wilson Windowware, and it was called WinBatch. And it was a really weird kind of crude tool, but you could do very interesting automations in Windows. Over the years, WinBatch, Maury Wilson, I think it was, that wrote the damn thing, got bored with it, quit evolving it, and eventually retired and sold it to someone else, I think, where I think it's still kind of maintained. But it inspired a couple of other tools, which I still use to this day, to do things to automate either my Solar or Eterm sessions to be able to essentially do batch changes in Eterm. Um, and most of it can be done with fairly simple program. I am probably the world's worst programmer, I should say. That has not stopped me from having to write hundreds and hundreds of little programs over the years because there was something that needed to be done and there was just no one else that could do it. And I've started with the dumbest programming language I could possibly think of, because back in the day when I went to college, they taught me Pascal on a DEC mainframe, which was about as useless as having a third set of nipples. So, and I do not have the patience for real legitimate object-oriented programming, especially when I'm trying to do quick and dumb things, and half the time I don't even know it's going to work. Anyway, so for example, there are probably 4 go-to tools that I work with, but I'm gonna deal with the oldest and simplest ones. And the one that I'm using right now. So here's an example scenario. Is I come to find out that for some strange reason we have a lot of invoices in our invoice preview queue that have built up over years, and now it slows things down and makes it ugly and our AR person who were recently hired is going to have a lot of trouble managing the invoice preview queue. The branch manager to be is going to have problems managing the invoice preview queue because it's never been managed before and it's got a bunch of garbage in it. For example, so branch 1, 2017. In the case of 5-star, we started on Eclipse June 15th, 2017, I think. And then go 12/31/2017, for example. I'm going to pick all of these. And you got to do update for it to comb through the database and look for all these. And so here, going all the way back to 2017, I've done some cleanup already, but going back to day 1, there were a couple of accounts that we routinely use for online sales that are in the invoice preview queue, and they were never going to be printed because they were an online sale, in this case, through Amazon or something, or our own e-commerce site. And this was done for bookkeeping and inventory control, but there was a whole different set of paperwork that actually went out to the customer. So these things are sitting here in limbo. Well, in order to get them out of the queue, well, they just need to be changed from, Q to, in this case, there's no one to print to. I don't want to print the piece of paper. We switch it to N, and we want to go through that over and over and over. Unfortunately, in this case, looking at the queue, now that it's been 6 or 7 years, there is like 30,000 records in here that need to be turned to N. God help me. And of course I want to actually look at them a little bit as I'm doing it, and I don't want to just like automatically change something without doing a review, so that I don't accidentally foul up something that I do need to invoice, print, or email out and didn't realize. So how would we handle something like this? Well, we can do the simple thing. I can click on it and drop down and select and next and next and next. And if I have to do that 27,000 times, I'll probably eat a bullet. So we don't want to do that. So how do I automate that? This is a pretty tedious and simple process. All I want to do is manipulate this screen. So I have learned over the years to use a tool called AutoHotKey. This is a free Windows automation tool, and what it does is it uses a similar to Visual Basic type of programming language. It's fairly simplified. The only quirk is it uses something called Hungarian notation, which I'm not particularly fond of. AutoHotKey was derived from an earlier program called AutoIt, which also uses the same Visual Basic-ish kind of like language and Hungarian notation. These are very old programs. They've been around for, oh God, at least 2 decades, probably 3 or at least 3 in many cases. They're well documented. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people over the years have used this thing, even though they are quite ancient. If you're on a Windows machine and you're doing some type of Windows screen automation, you still can't beat them. They're dead simple, they're very reliable, they're easy to work with, and there's lots of documentation out there to help you figure out how to do what you need to do. And I have used AutoIt and AutoHotKey over the years to do things that are magic, simply put. Anyway, AutoHotKey is really best designed to do a repetitive task that you want to semi-interact with. In this case, it's very, very good for what I do is I take the numeric keypad on the keyboard, the number pad, if you will, the one off to the right in most cases, and what I can do is I can program the number pad keys each to do a different automation, and that gives me a lot of different keys to work with. And it's a little tricky to remember sometimes, but it works really, really well. Anyway, once you've downloaded Hotkey and you've installed it, I also use it has an editor that's built in, but honestly, it was written like 2 decades ago. It's not. It's more. It's more dumbed down than using Notepad+, and that's saying something. Notepad+ is also a reasonably decent editor, but I'm an idiot for a programmer. I need all the help I can get, so currently my favorite darling is Visual Studio Code, because I use that for Python, and I can use it for AutoIt and AutoHotKey and a bunch of other weird things that I occasionally do. Anyway, so here you would see an example of the type of script that I'm running an AutoHotkey in the background, and I write a lot of little notes in here because I write a program once every 6 months, and I don't have a photographic memory, and I'll forget how to do things. And so this is just a little shortcut menu that I put in here of, okay, this is the command to send various things to a screen. This is how I loop things a certain number of times. Different things on how I manipulate the clipboard. A lot of things I've found over the years it's very helpful for is automating repetitive stuff in Excel. I do a lot of product information maintenance and rewrite in Excel, and then use the mass loads and other type of things to update that information. And so I've developed little scripts, AutoHotkey scripts, that allow me to work with repetitive information in a spreadsheet and multiply my time quite a lot. I always write a little message box in here that's a pop-up, so I can, when I can't remember what the hell it was that the AutoHotkey script, which key it is, because in this case I've got 13 different commands, and there's 3 or 4 AutoHotkey programs like this that I run that are very similar. I can't remember what 48 different commands are, so I cheat. So I wrote a little assigned a key that's a menu, so when I press it, it'll pop up and it'll remind me again what each one of these commands do. In this case, most of this is just copying, paste, clipboard, Excel manipulation, and it ran away. But the big function that I really needed here is send end n 15 times, which is the number pad enter key. So as you can see, this program, if you're not a programmer or you're an amateur programmer, right off the bat it starts to look a little daunting. But keep in mind, this is actually dead simple programming, and most what you're seeing here is comments. This is all the green stuff that I've written to myself, so that 6 months from now, when I go to open this thing and modify it, I've written notes to myself as to what in the hell this thing does. In this case, as I said, each one of these is a different sub-function assigned to a different key. Where I'm copying and pasting, I'm moving the focus down on a spreadsheet, I'm escaping, that type of stuff here. The one I'm particularly interested in is the numpad enter function. And where is it? It is, there we are. This is the numpad enter subroutine. So here, you can automate Solar. It can be done, but the Solar interface, for those of you that have worked with it, are familiar, it's hokey. It speeds up, it slows down, and so you get a lot of timing issues. Screens don't progress because these are fairly stupid programs. I'm just sending keys to an active screen, but there's no way for this program to read the reaction of the screen and react accordingly. I do have other tools that I use that can do that, somewhat loosely, but this can't. So in this case, timing is an issue. So as I said, you can automate Solar. Try not to when you can. If you can do it in Eterm, Eterm is the thing you want to automate, because Eterm, as old as it is much more reactive, much more consistent with its performance, much speedier, and much more amenable to automating. So in this case, when I hit the numpad enter key, it's going to look for this Eterm window, and it's going to go in a loop 15 times. It's going to send n, wait a few milliseconds to make sure that the n got accepted, and then it's going to down arrow to the next record. In this case, I want to do a quick modification to this program. I've decided I want to do 25 at a time, and I want to change the sleep to 300 because I've got a bad internet connection and sometimes it's a little too much. And so I go ahead and save that change. That's another thing with the AutoHotKey and AutoIt and Python. These are all scripting languages, so they're compiled when you go to run them. So it's much easier to make modifications and certainly a lot easier to read the code. So we're going to close that out and we're going to go to the screen that I was wanting to automate an Eterm here. So we're doing queues and invoice preview queue, and we're dealing branch 1, and we're starting 2017, 0101, 2017 to the end of 2017, 12/31, 2017, and we want everything, and we go ahead and populate our screen. All right. As we can see, our cursor is already in the print status column. So I'm going to go ahead and I ended the script that I had in memory. I'm going to restart it again. All scripts are going to show up with a .ahk command dots, where this Eterm invoice preview clear is the program that I just modified. So we go ahead and start that. It's going to pop up the little menu to remind me once again as to what all those dang buttons do, which I can OK at any time. And now it's going to keep running in the background, waiting for me to hit numpad keys and change what I'm going to change. And so now instead of having to hit, N down arrow, N arrow, down arrow, N down arrow, 4,554 times, now I can just hit the enter key on the numpad and it goes through. And as I said, this is great in this scenario where I wanted to take a little time. I wanted to semi-automate so I'm not wearing out my fingers, but I also want to have enough time to look at what it's doing just in case there's one that I actually want to process a different way and want to go up and manually change that print status to something else. So this seems like extremely trivial stuff, but boy, when you have to stare at Eclipse information and make modifications like this hours and hours and hours, these little things are just a godsend. Anyway, as you can see how cool that is, and once again I have the built-in menu. So when I can't remember what that key was again in a couple days, when I go to run this again, I can go ahead and hit my command and see, oh yeah, okay, that's what each one of these things do. Oh, cool. Now, the other tool that I have used, and it's kind of a toss-up. I mean, once you learn AutoHotKey, if you want to expand out and do fancier stuff with AutoIt, then that probably makes more sense if you don't do a lot of programming for a living. If you do have some background in programming Python, you may want to use Python SendKeys modules and run Python programs to automate Eterm or Solar. But I find AutoIt is really good when I really don't want an intervention where I know something that I want to do. Say, for instance, where I had to do an entire simulated inventory process. That was best handled by AutoIt or Python SendKeys. So AutoIt has a much more extended set of commands and loops, and much easier for me to take a formatted CSV file of information. So in this case, say if I wanted to, for some idiot reason, change some type of flag in hundreds of Eclipse product records, and there was no other elegant way I could do it. I could use AutoIt, and I could have a spreadsheet which I convert to a CSV file that's got the Eclipse record ID and the piece of information I want to change. And I would run this AutoIt program. It would take that CSV file that I've got, and it would send the Eclipse record ID to Eterm. It would tab down to whatever appropriate screen I need to make the change in. It would send the change in, and then back out again, and then next. Keep in mind these are brute force types of programs. They can't monitor and see what Eterm is doing. But Eterm is very reliable, and if you're just doing a fairly simple change, I've never found something that I couldn't compensate for or work around, and these things usually will run fine. But of course, usually you keep it running on an extra PC on your desk and watch it out of the corner of your eye, and if it loses its mind, you can halt it and figure out where the little bug happened, make a modification to your script, and run the rest of the batch. And that's worked out very well for me. The other two tools that I tend to use, Python send keys is a lot faster than AutoIt, and of course if you're more familiar with Python, then that works well. There is another tool that I have used over the years, which is very clever and almost no one's ever heard of. It's called Sekuli. And Sekuli actually does allow some degree of being able to read what's going on at the screen and change its behavior. It's not exactly foolproof, but it does some pretty clever things. Anyway, so in the wonderful world of Eclipse automation, these are two tools that may be of interest to you. If you want some example scripts, send me a direct message or something like that on my YouTube post, and I will send you a few scripts that I've written in the past. You can use in examples and modify as you need. Hopefully this is somewhat useful information. God only knows. Anyway, this is Doug Fashing, and have a good evening.